Hello and welcome to Gangs All Here. My name is Ryan Sampson, the host and producer of the show. He is Brian Costello, the Jets beat writer. Today is January 16th, Thursday, an anniversary, Kaz, of 14 years to the day today of the last Jets win in the playoffs, believe it or not, which is crazy. But we're here to talk about, of course, the Jets not being in the playoffs and searching for the next GM and head coach. But before I get to any of those things, I got to ask you, Kaz, how are you doing? How's the offseason been for you so far, man? We're getting an interview every single day with this Jets team, it feels like. I know it's a lot to keep up for you, but how you doing, man?
Yeah, all right, Ryan. I had something a personal matter I had to deal with last week, so I was kind of out of the mix for a while, and then jumped back in, and it seemed like there was 100 new names when I jumped back into it, and it's been crazy. I mean, Ryan, it looks a lot warmer out your window than it does out mine right now. That's a beautiful summer day behind you, huh?
We are officially in the new studio at the New York Post.
Wow.
I'm very happy and excited to be doing this for the first time here with you. There's going to be a lot more content coming from this studio. We got a nice green screen behind me so I could put any kind of image I want behind me. We were actually
Okay.
doing a little highlight rip of the last Jets playoff win against the Patriots with Brandon before. So that was kind of fun.
Okay.
We're going to do a lot of fun content here, man. This is going to be like our little playhouse, and we could be really creative in this space, which is nice.
All right. Well, you chose it. Just looks a lot warmer. I just noticed out your window that does right. I'm in this is my beautiful basement office, and it's quite cold down here this morning.
I hear you, man. But listen, we got a lot of news here, and I got to start off with what you wrote yesterday, which got you trending in the sports Jets Twitter land.
Oh, fantastic.
Fantastic, right?
I love the Jets trending and Jets Twitter. That's always good.
Hey, listen, it gets your name out there, right? Like, and you're the one that's on it. So I got to ask you, the Aaron Glenn situation.
Yeah.
You had wrote about him yesterday, and what his thinking is behind the scenes. He is one of the most coveted head coach candidates this cycle. It feels like his name has gotten very popular as of recent. You've seen what he said in the press yesterday to the Lions media. He said he's not just a defensive coordinator, he's a coach. He knows the
Yeah.
offense. I think Aaron, by all intents and purposes, is going to get a job this season, off season. It's just a matter of, the Jets have already done an interview with him over Zoom, but they're going to still do an in-person interview. For you, Kaz, when you wrote that, I thought it was interesting that, are the Jets his number one choice? And do you believe
Yeah.
that he really does want this Jets job?
Yeah, it's tough, Ryan. Like someone told me that he had told them that he wants the Jets job. But look, there's a lot of conversations going on in Aaron Glenn's world, and he may have told somebody else something different. There's a lot of stuff right now, Ryan, that isn't 100%. You can't say anything with 100% certainty right now with coaching searches. And anyone who is out there saying anything with 100% certainty is kind of misrepresenting things. Like it's very fluid right now. I talked to somebody yesterday who said, the Jets are not even close on this thing to hiring someone. So it's silly to even talk about who's a favorite and who's not, because until we see who they're bringing in for the second interviews, the in-person interviews, then we'll have a better idea of who's in contention for this job. I do think Aaron Glenn will be one of those people that they bring in, and depending on when the Lions season ends, we'll see. Like if they win on when are they playing? Saturday night? If they win on Saturday night, then the
Yeah.
Jets would have to wait to talk to him until after the championship games, till the dead week after the championship games. If they lose, the Jets can talk to him Monday. So we'll see. But like it's still obviously the Jets are talking to a million people.
Yeah.
It's still pretty hard to handicap this thing, but I do feel like Aaron Glenn has momentum with them. He checks a lot of boxes just looking at it logically. And I do think, from what I'm told, that he would prefer the Jets, but we'll see. Uh, that's again, they haven't talked money, they haven't talked years. Like, wait, if the Saints offer him a 7-year contract for $100 million, and the Jets offer him a 4-year contract for $40 million, guess who he's going to like better?
Yeah.
The Saints. So that's it's very, very early, Ryan. And so, not to denigrate my own reporting, but all this stuff right now is just kind of fluid.
It's fluid. It's fluid. It's a good way of putting it. Just like it's fluid for the start of the show, because now we got Frankie Vittorini here joining us in the discussion. Frankie, how you doing, bud? Are you enjoying the offseason for the Jets so far?
Doing, Kaz?
Uh,
Good seeing you again. How's it
Thank you.
going, Rye? I would say I'm not really enjoying it as much as usual. I don't really think the Jets are winning the offseason thus far. I think
It's
we're
the first
starting like
inning,
0 and
Frankie. It's
2.
the
Yeah,
first
it's the
inning.
beginning of the game. It's the first quarter.
First inning. They haven't even pitched yet.
We're usually like the 2007 Patriots in the offseason. I don't know what's going on this year, but no, you know what? I think they're doing their diligence. Kaz, great reporting. You've been crushing it out there. I am a little concerned. I'm sure we're going to get into it, but yeah, thanks for having me on. Sorry for the technical difficulties with the new setup. Rye, you look fantastic, by
Oh,
the
thank
way.
you.
And
Kaz is
where
making
you're
fun
at.
of me.
I
He
really
says
like
it's
that.
too warm behind me right now. New York City doesn't look like this currently
My
right now.
outside my window, it's freezing, Frankie. So
Yeah, same here. Yeah, my landlord decided not to put the heat on again last night or plug it in the middle of the night.
My
So
God.
that's been happening to me quite often.
Well, we're gonna get warm here with the Jets offseason talk, and Frankie, I just asked Kaz about his report yesterday about Aaron Glenn, and he's still saying obviously it's too early in the process to even hint at if the Jets are going to hire someone like Aaron Glenn. You know, I asked Kaz this, and I think this could be another question: is Aaron Glenn the number one candidate, though, this offseason? You know, Ben Johnson's name was thrown out there. I think Vrabel was a target. You know, I had talked to you, Kaz, and said I wanted the Jets to go after Vrabel. He's the one guy you could actually hire before the GM itself. He takes the Patriots job, just like you had said, Kaz. Is Aaron Glenn the number one target, though, you think, for this search firm with Woody and the 33rd team?
I mean, I think
don't think they have a number one though, right? I don't think they have a number one in terms of like, look how many people they're talking to.
I know,
right? Like,
Yeah.
I think they really don't know who. I think Vrabel was probably above everybody else, and if they could have gotten Vrabel, they would have. But in terms of like the group that like I think we're up to 18 between interviews and requests. I think they are literally just going in and seeing, what they like and figuring it out. I think Aaron Glenn just makes the most sense when you look at he seems like he's a disciplinarian. Seems like he would be a program builder in terms of that and changing the culture. He comes from a place where they just did it in Detroit. He's got ties to the organization.
Yep.
I do think Woody wants to make you guys happy. I think he is going to want to hire somebody that's going to excite the fan base and maybe help sell some tickets. I don't think that's just going to be his motivating factor, but I think Aaron Glenn does that where I'm not sure who else is going to really get you guys juiced.
Oh, Arthur Smith doesn't do it for you, Kaz? Doesn't do it for us fans?
No, I'm pretty sure that's pretty clear that Arthur Smith won't be the guy that gets you guys excited.
So I think that's interesting that you just said that. Do you believe that Woody is going to, again, what the reports are, listen to the fans a little bit, and when they
I don't think it's the sole motivation, Ryan. Like, let me get that clear. I don't think he's going to go like, oh my God, I want this guy because the fans are going to like him. No. But I think when you're looking at Aaron Glenn's resume, so to speak, right, and you're looking at what qualities he'll bring to the Jets, and then you're stacking him up against any of these other candidates, I do think if they like Aaron Glenn as a football person, and they think he's going to be a guy who can bring accountability to the organization and sort of be that guy that's going to kick players in the butt, I think that's that's their biggest priority.
Yeah.
I think if you say, okay, I then think the added benefit is he probably is the guy that's going to get fans excited. And I think that would be appealing to Woody, who obviously, the PR of this team has not been very good. And the PR for Woody has not been very good for several months. They could use a win in that department. Now, I don't like, they can't get caught up in winning the press conference. They can't go like throw somebody out because they're not going to win the press conference. But I do think if it's a discussion of Aaron Glenn, you can put that as a in the plus side is that he would excite the fan base.
Before I get to you, Frankie, to ask a question, I got to follow up there, Kaz. So I read that what you wrote yesterday, and I thought that was interesting, win the press conference, because that was what Robert Saleh was. He did win the press conference. Yeah. And you wrote about how, listen, if we're looking at that previous coaching cycle, right, in 2021, Robert Saleh was the number one hot candidate. Dan Campbell was not the number one candidate.
Yeah. Ryan, there were 7 guys hired that year.
Right.
Okay. And I went back and read, Sports Illustrated. My friend poor Connor Orr, had to do a grading the coaching hires in January of 21. Saleh got an A. Urban Meyer got an A. Like solid Urban Meyer. Like remember when Urban Meyer was hired by the Jags? I was like, oh my god, what a home run hire! Like this is going to be great. And the guys who got panned were Sirianni and Campbell. Right? Sirianni's press conference was a disaster. He really was struggling to like speak. And then Dan Campbell was getting mocked for the kneecaps comment and being kind of this like character. And those two guys are playing this weekend. Salah's been fired, Urban Meyer's been fired, Arthur Smith's been fired, David Culley's been fired, and I'm forgetting somebody else that was fired from that hiring cycle. So it just shows you don't get crazy about the first impressions. We really don't know who's going to be successful and who isn't.
No, Kaz, that's a good point. I mean, you don't know. And I think as a fan and as someone starting to work in the media, you're starting to see the reactions to certain candidates being interviewed and others getting second interviews, et cetera.
Yeah.
It's all overblown for the most part. We don't know. We don't know who will be good. We don't know who. Maybe Arthur Smith could be good in some weird world. I mean, things are always unique to the situation and to the staff and to the team.
I'd say if Arthur Smith was hired in 2021, you guys would have been probably excited about it.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm actually one of the few. Yeah, Kaz, I'm one of the few people that I like Arthur Smith to a degree, not necessarily as a head coach here, but I think he's sort of the person on Twitter that just gets crapped on all the time as being like the worst candidate imaginable.
Yeah, he's 21 and 30, I think, as a head coach, right?
Yep.
Does not really have
37 and 10 seasons.
Doesn't really have the dynamic personality. The Pittsburgh offense has not been very good recently, but it's the players.
I agree.
The players. Like, who the good 100%. Coaches are? The ones with good players.
Yeah.
So like that, and that brings us to the GM hire, which you talk about, like, we don't know who's going to be a good head coach. We really don't know who's going to be a good GM because none of these guys have, other than like a few of them that have done it before, have really a resume where we say, all right, this like Mike Borgonzi. What decisions did he make in Kansas City? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I mean, he gets praise from guys like Field Yates on Twitter. It's like, there's no better hire right now than Mike Borgonzi. It's like, how do you know what Mike Borgonzi's been doing with the Chiefs? Yeah,
I mean, look, like Joe Douglas was probably the most solid hire I've seen the Jets make. Like, he was the guy everyone praised, and Joe did. I think Joe did a lot of good things, but it didn't ultimately work out here. So you just never know because you're really projecting them into doing a different job. And I think I think we might use this analogy before. If you put me in charge of the entire newspaper, the entire New York Post and website and everything, I wouldn't know what I'm doing. I'm good in my own little world here, but like, it's hard to make that leap. And that's what a general manager is doing. If you're hiring a scout or, even like an assistant GM, it's a tough jump.
Kaz, let me ask you one question. What do you think about this offensive staff that Aaron Glenn, assuming he does take the job, what kind of staff would he bring here? Because I'm concerned that Ben Johnson might poach some of the same people in Detroit if he were to take a job as Glenn. So I'm a little bit concerned about that. Without a quarterback option in 26, Kaz, for us necessarily, or even in 25.
I haven't heard any names. I haven't heard any names, Frankie, of who he would bring as an offense coordinator, which that's going to be the question. That's the biggest question to me is, and I don't know. I mean, he's coached for a long time now, so it's not like he just has to hire the guy in the office next to him in Detroit. Like, he's been around, he knows people. He's probably got some ideas from his time in New Orleans and the time in Detroit of who he might hire. And like the other part of that, like with Ben Johnson and him, if they both get head coaching jobs, typically what happens is the head coach, like Dan Campbell would say, okay, you get to take one guy with you. Right? Like they don't want you taking their best coaches. So usually you get to take like one guy with you from the staff, right? Like Saleh took Mike LaFleur from San Francisco. And I think he had like the choice of Mike LaFleur and Mike McDaniel basically. And he took LaFleur. So I would think Campbell would probably tell those guys like, yeah, you got one guy to go with you. And maybe for Aaron, that's his defensive coordinator. Maybe it's somebody he's worked closely with there that he thinks could be a good defensive coordinator. But yeah, I don't know, Frankie. I haven't heard who the staff would be. And I do think that is a huge, huge question. Like, I saw somebody on Twitter saying like, oh, maybe he'll bring like these 3 guys from Detroit. Like, no, like Detroit's not letting all their good coaches out of the building. Like, Detroit's going to be kneecapped, to use a term, with losing their 2 coordinators. You think they're now going to want to lose like 3 position
100%.
coaches too? So I think it's going to be probably somebody from outside of Detroit as the offensive coordinator.
It's more than just the big question. Is the question, Kaz, I feel like, is the staff that Glenn would bring if he was the Jets head coach, because that was, I think, to all intents and purposes, Robert Saleh's one of his weaknesses is the staff that he assembled here at the Jets. It wasn't a good staff. It wasn't a strong staff. We saw how much
offensive staff, I'd say, Ryan. I thought their defensive staff was pretty strong.
Yeah,
I mean, he assembled a very good defensive staff. I think Jeff Ulbrich was a good defensive coordinator. I think Tony Oden did a good job. I think Marquand Manuel did a good job. I think Aaron Wycott did a good job. Offensively, he hired a lot of guys who had never done the job before, and that was tough. And it's not just him. Todd Bowles, I thought his staff, he didn't hire good staff when he first came on. So it's tricky because like you're having these like in the coaching world right now, they're having like back channel conversations like, hey, if I get this job, will you come with me?
Yeah.
But they might be having the same conversation with 2 different guys that are up for head coaching jobs, and they're going to go that like it sort of becomes you're picking from the scraps at some point, and so it does get tough, And I think so. Like Vrabel right now has a nice advantage. Like he's probably lining up his staff, and he can do it before anybody else. But yeah, I've said before, offensive line coach is the other one to me. Like, tell me who the offensive line coach is going to be, because I feel like the Jets haven't had a good one in a long time.
Yeah, and the Lions built within. I mean, they have 2 of the best trenches, both the offensive and defensive line. Yeah. Even though they've taken a ton of hits on the defensive side of the ball, when it comes to injuries, they're still performing at one of the best, and that gives you credit to Aaron Glenn, and I think it raises.
What makes me laugh, though, Ryan, is that's exactly what Saleh's calling card was in 2021. If you remember, the 49ers got decimated in 2020 by injuries with Bosa, Solomon Thomas, I think Eric Armstead, maybe. Like they had a ton of injuries, and it was like, oh, look at Saleh kept the defense together. So I do feel like there's a little sense of deja vu with what I hear about Aaron Glenn.
Well, and then that's kind of my follow-up there is this just a repeat of how the Jets have gone about hiring their head coaches? You look at Todd Bowles, first-time defensive coordinator. He did the interim head coach a little bit, obviously, so he had some history. But, again, a strong defensive mind coming in, taking over as the head coach. Then you had Robert Saleh after Adam Gase. And now, if it is Aaron Glenn, it seems like the retread of what the Jets feel comfortable in the front office with, a strong defensive mind, someone that's a leader, has that motivational, we're not going to take any crap from no one, we're going to play strong defense, all that mindset. Is that part of, I won't say the issue, but is that going into why the Jets have been kind of dysfunctional at the head coach position now for, I want to call it 9, almost 14 years now? Like it's
I
crazy.
don't think so, Rod. I think they're separate. They're like each search has been a very separate thing and its own identity. And even, Woody wasn't involved with Gase or Saleh. So I don't think you can let that deter you. I think you gotta hire the best guy. And like if you look at the coaches that are still playing right now, they're all from different backgrounds. And like Sean McDermott would fit exactly what you're saying, right?
Yeah.
Like, he was the defensive guy the first time, and he's worked out in Buffalo.
3 different offensive coordinators too.
There's no formula to doing this. Like you gotta trust your instincts and hope you hire the right guy. And that they're obviously doing the work. They're interviewing all these people. I know the process is pretty elaborate that they have. I talked to somebody the other day who got a call from one of the 33rd team. Like it's not like Mike or Rick. It's one of the people that work for them. Like asking about people they've worked with, and like they doing digging on coaching candidates and GM candidates, and so they're doing the work. And they just have to hope the process pans out, and they've got to find players. I'm going to repeat that again because it doesn't really matter who you hire if you don't have good players. Especially they need a freaking quarterback. So like
pick it up.
That's the key.
Yeah, I agree. I couldn't agree more. Picking up off that with players, let's get into some players. Do you think that, and I've heard this and fans are speculating, that the Jets may look at trading one of the premier, let's call them the top 4, the Mount Rushmore of the current Jets right now.
Right.
Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall, Sauce Gardner, and a sleeper there, Quinnen Williams. Do you think, and I did some research, I did some digging as to first-year GMs or first-time GMs in new places, they typically make splash moves. You see Brandon Beane, when he got to Buffalo, traded 4 players off the bat, traded up to get Josh Allen. There's moves that are made pretty aggressively by a GM who comes in, who wants to stack the deck a bit and kind of change things without having any allegiance to players. Could you see the Jets trading either Garrett, Brees, Sauce, or Quinnen Williams?
Not to make a splash move, Frankie. I don't think. I think this roster is the strength of the team in terms of when you're hiring. Like, you're looking at the hires. Like, if you're breaking down like the Jets versus New Orleans, the Jets versus the Raiders, the Jets versus the Cowboys, the Jets roster stacks up pretty favorably against those other teams. So I don't feel like this is like a complete and total rebuild somebody's walking into where they're going to need, like Joe Douglas needed picks, right? He traded Jamal, traded Leonard Williams. Like, he needed draft picks because he knew he had to basically completely rebuild the roster. He had Quinnen and not much else when he got here. So I don't think it's that. Where the trade conversation comes in, Frankie, is Garrett going to say, I want a contract. I want $35 million a year. And if you're not going to give it to me, trade me. Then maybe you're talking, right? And that would be him and that would be Sauce. Those are the only 2 real people I could see that could take that stance. Quinnen got paid already. I don't think Brees has done enough to sit there and go, I want a new contract yet. I think Sauce and Garrett, could possibly say they want extensions, and do they play hardball, and do they do the, trade demand thing? And again, the trade demand doesn't always result in a trade, but maybe then somebody goes, you know what, I'll move on. But I don't know. I mean, I think Woody Johnson would have a tough time with that. I think he loves having these young players. I think it's been a long time since they had a young core, and they've got it right now. And I think it's basically the strength of the team at the moment.
It is. I'd have a hard pill swallowing too as a Jets fan, seeing Garrett Wilson or Brees Hall go, just because I don't feel like they've reached their full potential here, and that's just part of the reason of why I wouldn't want to trade those guys.
I don't think it'll happen, Ryan. I do think we're going to get a little dance coming with Garrett.
Yeah.
I think we're going to get the contract dance coming, which, and basically, if you've watched now, the playbook of these agents is demand a trade comes up at some point.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and if, again, Brandon Ayuk was going to get traded, right? Until he got a contract. And I'm thinking of all the San Francisco guys. Deebo Samuel demanded a trade and didn't get traded. There's guys outside of San Francisco where this has happened too.
AJ Brown got traded.
Yeah, AJ Brown got traded, but that one wasn't even
a contract
we talked about. That was out of nowhere, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but this is kind of the contract dance that people do now, and there's going to be. So if Garrett demands a new contract, and the Jets kind of balk at it, then you could see trade talks. But I still, it's hard for me to envision any of those guys getting traded.
So, Kaz, we've touched on Aaron Glenn, what his candidacy is, how he's going to assemble, like what his staff could potentially look like. I want to talk about some of these other candidates here.
Yeah.
They're interviewing Bobby Slowick today, according to reports. His name is interesting.
Yeah.
I think
him and Arthur Smith, I think, are today.
Okay. So those are 2 offensive guys. This goes now a little bit different in the fact that, the Jets have gone with the defensive hire for the last, 4 out of 5 hires, right? Actually, longer than that if you want to count Herm Edwards. And Eric Mangini. So,
yeah, Adam Gase and Richie Kotite are the last 2 offensive hires. So if you want to make the case against offensive hires, that's where you go.
Right.
For the Jets. So everyone's like, oh, we don't want another Todd Bowles and another Rex Ryan. It's like, well, the last 2 times they went offense, it didn't really work either.
So I blame Rich Kotite for all our pain, Ryan. All of our problems start and end with him.
I blame Peyton Manning for ruining this franchise for a couple of years here. For getting Adam Gase.
It's a good one too.
Well, Peyton Manning should be blamed for going back to school, though, Ryan. That's where Peyton Manning screwed the Jets.
It's all tied together.
He went back to school.
It's all tied to Peyton. And Frankie, we also touched today is the 14-year anniversary of the Jets' last playoff win against the Patriots in 2011, January 16th. One of my favorite days in my life as a Jets fan. I will never forget that day. But this brings about now, Kaz, and you wrote this, they are doing as much research as they can on these guys. there's only so much you can know about a head coaching candidate, obviously through interviews and what they've done on the staff and how their teams, how their units have performed. Do you think there's an early favorite list being built by Woody and, Mike and Rick about, hey, listen, these are the guys we think that could really be that head coach for this team? Because tell me if I'm wrong, I think the head coach is going to have a much bigger impact on 2025's team than the GM hire will be.
The head coach is the most important hire. Okay, let's make that clear. Like the head coach sets the tone in the building. They set the tone for the organization. The GM is kind of in the background. Like obviously player procurement is huge and they're going to have a huge job, but the head coach is the one, and I think the Jets know this. That's the one that's the number one priority. Because everything comes from the head coach.
Yeah.
Everything they're just like, it's hard to describe in the building. Like I've told guys like before, like you realize like if the head coach acknowledges somebody in that building, that's like the biggest part of that person's day. Like I'm not talking about players or coach. I'm talking about the kitchen staff, the janitor, the person answering the phones at the front desk. Like, the head coach like recognizes that's like, oh my God, the head coach. Like they're a huge person. So yeah, I think they know that, right? I think they know they got to get that right. And the hard part, like just thinking about it is like you have to figure out how this person is going to handle pressure.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure how you do that in an interview. I really don't. Because like you got to like that's when things go wrong with the Jets and their coaches. It's not like 2025 will probably be pretty rosy, like in terms of like, oh, new coach, there'll be excitement. They'll say they'll have a slogan that everyone will enjoy and people are going to like their press conferences. And, no matter what, like Todd Bowles' press conferences were huge in 2015 because it was, oh, finally we have the anti-Rex. He doesn't want to tell you guys anything. We love this. I remember hearing that. And then all of a sudden, like 2 years later, it was like, what's with this guy? He doesn't say anything. Like we want somebody with personality, And then
So
Saleh,
true.
like Gase was never popular, so I'm going to leave him out. But Saleh comes in.
What a wild press
and it was
conference
like,
that
oh
was
my
with Gase.
gosh, we love Saleh. We love Saleh. Oh, this is the greatest thing ever. And then it was like, this guy's an idiot. Well, you can't stand him.
He
We can't
speaks
watch
too
his press
much.
conferences.
Tells you guys too much.
Yeah, so I think 2025 will be fine. I think where things have gone wrong is what happens when what hits the fan.
Yeah.
And they're dealing with crazy adversity. How do they handle that? How do they handle Woody coming down on them? How do they handle the media coming down on them? How do they handle the back page? How do they handle talk radio in this town? How do they handle Jets Twitter in this town? Like the fans, like how do they handle all of that?
How do they handle Frankie's spaces at night? Yeah.
And if you can figure out if you can figure out how to give the Jets that answer, you get paid a lot of money. And I think that's what Mike and Rick are trying to do. And God bless them, they're trying to do that in this process. But I'm not sure how you figure that out. And that's why like Dan Quinn to me was an interesting hire for Washington.
Yeah.
Because we watched the worst moment of his career unfold. All of us watched it. And 28-3, we all watched it. And then you saw like how like you could talk to him like, okay, what did you do after that? How did you bounce back from that? Like I think that's fascinating because I don't know. Like what's Aaron Glenn's worst moment? I don't know.
Could be this weekend.
What's been the worst moment? Like and it's tough. Is it last year in San Francisco, right? Where they lost that game? Like, but like Dan Quinn had just this like the worst sports moment you could have. And so I do think that was interesting with Washington hiring him last year that they could get that. So I think you got to figure out how these guys are going to handle adversity, and I have no idea how you do that.
Well, I think one thing that comes with that and what you're highlighting is experience. So one thing that we've noticed this week is the Jets, while they've interviewed Rex Ryan, they've interviewed Ron Rivera and Mike Vrabel. But, yeah. I mean, they haven't asked for interviews with Mike McCarthy, Pete Carroll, guys that are out there that have proven they can win, guys that have head coaching experience.
Do we know they haven't asked for interviews, Ryan?
All right, we don't. That hasn't been reported, right? Hasn't been reported. Even
so
though they've interviewed guys like from Maryland, though. Like they've interviewed every candidate under the sun except for Carroll and McCarthy from all reports.
Yeah, I do think though that if let's say the Jets reached out to those guys or their agents and their agents said not interested, right? Stuff that comes out in the media, and as a media person, usually someone tells you, when they're telling you it, it benefits them to tell you that, right? So if the Jets were putting something out, it makes them look good. If the coach is putting something out, it makes them look good. Not sure anyone benefits from that, and I don't know if it's happened, but if Pete Carroll was approached and said thanks but no thanks, Pete's not going to say, oh, let's tell reporters that because I want to make the Jets look bad, and the Jets aren't going to put that out there because it makes them look bad. Like it makes them look unattractive. So that could have happened.
Right.
I don't know, but so I think they must have at least had exploratory conversations about those two, and maybe they found out it really wasn't going to happen.
Well, that's what's interesting. You put that out there because, again, they are interviewing everyone, and we've gotten so many candidates that they're talking to. I just find it unique because a lot of, I'll call it fans and also media members have said, listen, one of these two candidates has to have previous experience. I don't know if they want to go the first time route for both the GM and head coach again.
Yeah.
But I don't know if all I'm hearing is if it isn't Aaron Glenn and if you pair him up with a first time GM, you're going with 2 first time hires again.
Yeah. I mean, it could end up that way. I mean, that was a preference. I know that was a preference, but they might end up with that. I know they were having conversations about Mike McCarthy 2 days ago, and they were talking about it. Pete Carroll, I haven't asked about in a while.
Mm-hmm.
Pete Carroll, I asked about in like December, and I heard his name. They hadn't really talked about it, but that was kind of early. I have to check on that again. But I know McCarthy, they were talking about it the other day, and so it wasn't like they were like, "Oh my gosh, no way, we're not interviewing Mike McCarthy." I just don't know. I also got the feeling, Ryan, from the way just watching how things were reported the other day,
Mm-hmm.
that maybe he knows that Chicago or New Orleans is going to hire him. Like it felt like things were maybe further down the line with those two teams than we knew. Right? Like Chicago requested to interview him and got turned down.
Yep.
So clearly, like there was some back channel conversations going on between Chicago and his people. So maybe, maybe his preference is Chicago or New Orleans, and he doesn't really like. He interviewed with the Jets in 2019, and they hired Adam Gase. So maybe Mike McCarthy is like, you know what? I'm not really going down that road again. I talked to you guys 5 years ago, and you didn't hire me. So, screw you. I'm going to go. That's kind of the feeling, I guess. So I think the assumption is, oh my God, the Jets aren't trying. I think it's a little more complicated than that.
Yeah, Kaz, quick question. How many years do you think Woody Johnson is going to be able to not step on toes concern, with,
I thought you were going to ask me about his
hires.
lifespan first, Frankie. So I was like, I was getting a little worried there where you were going with that question.
No, but
look,
what's the leash on Glenn? Like, what's the or any head coach? If it's Matt Nagy, like, how many years is Woody going to give these candidates or hires to build a winning product? Yeah.
I think the GM and coach are going to sell Woody on a vision, right? They're going to come in. Yeah. This is our vision. This is what we're going to do. This is the plan. And I think Woody's going to buy in to whoever he hires. And then I think when he feels like that plan is not working, he's going to step back in. So is that, I'm going to guess, like, you have a year for sure where he's going to probably leave you alone. If this year they go 3-14, I think Woody's probably going to have something to say at the end of the year. If they go 9-8 or 8-9, and there's signs that there's progress or whatever, like it's hard to define what progress is going to look like in January, right? Because we don't even know what the roster is going to be. I think he'll stay away. I think where Woody starts getting involved is when he feels like guys are not successful at their jobs, and you can argue that he, whether that's good management or bad management, but I think if he feels like the plan is working and the team is winning at some clip, he'll say, I mean, the thing that I think has kind of gotten twisted with Woody, obviously he gets involved in things and he probably shouldn't be that involved in football decisions as he is sometimes. But in terms of patience, I would argue that the Jets have had too much patience in some regard. Rex Ryan got 6 years. Okay. You could have argued Rex should have been fired after 4 years with Mike Tannenbaum. Mike McCagnon got 4 years, or 5. Todd Bowles got 4 years. You could have argued he should have been gone after 2 or 3 years, probably 3 years, he would say. McCagnon, they actually brought back for a 5th year, and then he got fired with the power struggle with Gase. Joe Douglas got
6.
Was it 6 years?
6 years.
6 years. Saleh got into the fourth season, even though he hadn't made the playoffs in his first three. So like you can make the argument that they've been too patient in some regards. So
Well, the irony is that he stayed too patient for Saleh this year. Could have probably gotten rid of him in the offseason, and you could have had a real shot at hiring Mike Vrabel this offseason.
yeah, I know that's convenient, Ryan. I think, but if we go back a year ago, like the way that it was set up, they went all in on Aaron Rodgers, and they had to see that through this year. And Aaron Rodgers wasn't going to be signing up for a new coaching staff like that. Like he, he
Even if
probably
it
would
was
have gone.
Vrabel?
He probably would have been the vice presidential candidate for RFK Jr. if that. So
I think he still might. I think he will be eventually. By the way, so
I
letting
just
everyone
I
know
just
that.
think I get it, and I think do think you can make the argument. Well, what if you're going to fire him after 5 games? Why didn't you fire him last year? I understand that argument, but I do think at the time it made sense to run it back. But yeah, I think Frankie, I think it's when he loses faith in their that what they're doing is working. That's when he's going to step back in and be more involved again.
Kaz, but if you give Aaron Glenn no quarterback, let's say Rodgers is gone, and for all intents and purposes, he is. What are you gonna do with Tyrod Taylor, Jordan Travis, or if you were to, let's say, bark up the free agency market? Realistically, I think going, 4-13, although it might look bad on paper, if you start developing certain areas, you have a quarterback, let's say, that you drafted, a Will Howard or Jackson Dart that gets some time developing. I don't think that's necessarily a bad year. Not saying you said that, but I think if they are a little more patient in the process, specifically with developing a quarterback, I think they could have something. My issue is if they do go 4-13, then fans want, the coach's neck. I don't know. It just worries me.
Yeah.
Heads on stick treatment we do on Jets social media.
Yeah, maybe. I think they got a year. I don't think he's going to be overly involved if they don't win this year. I think the second year there's got to be results, and the quarterback plan is definitely part of this. Like what do you do a quarterback? And are they in the market next year to draft one? I think that changes the equation too, because then you're buying yourself a little bit more time. But yeah, I think he just has to have faith in what they're doing.
So, Kaz, I have two final questions here. Alluding to, again, like the McCarthy, Carroll stuff, of the offensive-minded head coaches that they are interviewing, like a Slowick, a Joe Brady, and an Arthur Smith, how are they going to weigh those guys compared to like an Aaron Glenn? And, it just feels like we are going towards Aaron Glenn. There's a lot of noise and chatter there. I'm not going to assume, but it's looking that way. And my final question is, after that, is Aaron Glenn going to be the Jets head coach in 2025?
Yeah, I think it's way too early, Ryan, to say.
Okay.
And I know it feels that way, and it sort of becomes that way because of the reporting and stuff. It felt like Dan Quinn was going to be the Jets coach in 2015. And then Todd Bowles ended up being the coach, right? I don't think people really saw Adam Gase becoming the head coach in 2019 until the last minute. I had heard early on that they liked him, but it didn't become that way. So there's twists and turns here. Even Saleh, it was down to Saleh and Arthur Smith at the end. Both had in-person interviews at the end there. So we don't know. I think we're still 2 weeks away, Ryan. I think that week, the dead week after the championship game, is probably when the head coach will be hired. So I think it's too early to say what it is. And in terms of the offensive coaches, I think they all have a good shot. I think they just have to show, are they more than just a play caller? I do think the Jets want someone who's going to establish a program here. And, I think they want somebody who's going to kind of unite the building, and from ownership on down to the players and everything in between. I think they're going to want to see that. I think sometimes these offensive coordinators who are like whiz kids necessarily don't have that experience to go. I thought who I think is an interesting name, Ryan, that just came up is that Jeff Hatley from Green Bay. He's interesting to me because he has had coaching experience, not in the NFL, but Boston College for 4 years, and those college coaches basically do everything. So he has had to be a program builder. The defense was great in Green Bay this season, so he does know that side of the ball. He's been around. He was in Tampa Bay for a while. He's been around the NFL more than just this year with Green Bay. He has an NFL experience. So I don't know. He's an interesting guy to me that they're bringing in to talk to as well.
I wonder what Robert Saleh told him about the Jets in Green Bay. I'm very curious
So
about that
yeah,
conversation.
it's funny, Frankie. I talked to somebody when I heard his name. I heard his name for the first time the other day, and basically, I said to someone, like, can you imagine, like, so he's got Matt LaFleur there, who's Saleh's best friend, who probably knew everything that was going on with the Jets in real time. And then Saleh's been in the building for a few months there, visiting every week. So he could ask him about him. Mike LaFleur has also told his brother all about the Jets, I'm sure. I'm like, this guy probably knows a lot about what went on with the Jets, and he still wants to interview for the job. So that's a good sign for the Jets.
It is.
Very good sign.
And how about if he gets hired by the Jets and then Saleh takes his job with the Packers?
You think he'd take Saleh? Seems like he's going to get a head coaching job. I mean, he's interviewing with the Cowboys today. He's flying to the Raiders, I think, tonight to interview with them tomorrow.
He's Raiders. Raiders are today, and then I think the Cowboys are Saturday.
Okay, so flip that. But like, he's getting legit consideration for these head coaching positions. I mean, he's getting interviews with these teams. So I think that's interesting that teams still view Robert Saleh as a good head coaching candidate worthy of an interview. So, and apparently the 49ers have offered him his defensive coordinator job if he wants to come back.
Yeah, I'm not sure it's been offered to him, but they've had conversations about it. I think I'm not sure how if he's going to get any of these head coaching jobs. In my view, he's probably going to end up as a defensive coordinator again. But I think, I think Saleh, if he does a good job as a defensive coordinator for a few years somewhere, he'll get a head coach look again in a few years. That's kind of how I see things going for him, probably.
Kaz, wrapping this up timeline wise, you said that their dead period could be possibly for the Jets head coaching hire. Can you just walk us really quickly through how they're going to go through this GM search as the second? I'm assuming the second round of interviews is going to happen here soon.
Yeah, so they're doing the coaching interviews now with guys who are playing this past weekend. So Slowick and Arthur Smith, I think, are Thursday. I think Flores is Friday. I also think Joe Brady is somewhere in there. I'm sure I'm forgetting somebody because there's 10 people that are still like on the list to be interviewed. But
what about Matt Nagy?
Nagy already interviewed.
Okay.
He interviewed last week. So he didn't play last week.
That's right.
But the Kansas City and Detroit guys interviewed already. So yeah, so these are the guys who played on Wild Card Weekend, have to interview now. McCown should be in that mix as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, so all those guys that played. So I think they're going to wrap those up in the next few days, and then I think you'd see the second GM interviews probably starting this weekend, I would think. Maybe Sunday or Monday, or I think probably this weekend they'll start. I think they'd like to have a GM hired early next week, and then the GM can sit in on the second head coaching interviews, right? And then the GM, because I know there's some concern about like, wow, there's one camp that's like, why would you hire a coach before a GM? They're not doing that. I think they would have done that with Mike Vrabel, and that's about it. So I think, if they're bringing Aaron Glenn back, if they bring 3 or 4 other guys back for second interviews, now whoever the GM is can sit in on those interviews, and they can have a say in who the head coach is. So I would think if you go through that process, interviewing guys next week, coaching-wise, and then whoever's in the championship games, they have to wait until after the championship games to do the second interview. So that would be, if Detroit wins this weekend, that would be Glenn obviously there, or if Kansas City wins this weekend and they want to talk to Matt Nagy or Steve Spagnuolo again, that would be the dead week. So to me, that's probably the timeline, and I think they'd probably hire somebody that week. I don't see why it would go longer than that. And then, if someone's in the Super Bowl, I don't think they can make it official until after the Super Bowl, but we've played that game before where we know a guy's getting hired and then, wait. So we'll see.
Well, Kaz, I know it's that is quite the tracker right there, and that is a long schedule ahead for the Jets. Obviously, we'll be paying attention to it all as those reports keep continuously coming out. But I'm glad we got to talk to you after yesterday with Aaron Glenn. We're obviously going to keep our eyes peeled on what that's going to happen, and if he does end up getting a second interview with the Jets, and if they hire a GM early next week, I'm assuming you, me, and Frankie will be coming on for maybe a live show next week, and we'll discuss who the heck the Jets GM is and
we'll break down everything we know about the guy.
Hey, listen, if it's Ryan Grigson,
if he knocked on Frankie's door right now and said, "I'm here to turn on the heat," Frankie probably wouldn't know. Oh, that's Mike Borgonzi, or he probably wouldn't know who he was. Yeah, but well, we're gonna break it down whether it's a good hire or a bad hire. I love hiring season, Ryan.
It's your favorite. I can tell, Kaz. You love doing
By the
this.
way, Kaz,
the only thing that's worse is draft season. That's the only thing that's worse.
yeah.
It's Frankie's
Kaz,
two
be
favorite
careful
seasons.
out there. Be careful out there, Kaz. By the way, you're catching a lot of Twitter strays. A lot of these beat reporters are very upset with you. I've been hearing things in spaces because you get the exclusives and they don't. I'm just letting you know there's some people.
Listen, Kaz does his job, and he does it very well.
And he
for
does it
us,
very
and he
well.
does gives us time to talk to him and berate him with questions and poke him with stuff that he doesn't like talking about, like off-season searches for head coaches and GMs.
So this I've used this comparison before. I probably used it to you, Ryan. It's like reporting. There's like meat and potato reporting, and then there's cotton candy reporting, and that like mock drafts are cotton candy, right? There is no nutritional value in mock drafts. There's no actual reporting in a mock draft, and it drives you guys crazy. Like it's amazing, and so this isn't quite there. Like there is some legit information here, and people are talking about it. A lot of it is whispers and rumors, and it's the truth is with the Jets, there are, let me think, 5 guys who really absolutely know what's going on, right? Woody Johnson, Christopher Johnson, Jaime Elhai, Mike Tannenbaum, and Rick Spielman. Those are the 5 guys that are in the room for interviews. And, other than them, I don't think anyone really knows what's going on. So if you're not talking to one of those 5, you don't necessarily know. And those guys aren't saying a whole lot right now.
Well, guys, we're looking forward to seeing what happens this weekend. And if the Jets make some news next week, I'm sure we'll be talking to you then. As always, this is the Gangs All Here episode. And we appreciate all of you for watching. Hit that like, hit that subscribe button on the YouTube channel. Frankie, Kaz, thank you guys. Appreciate you as always, man.
All right, guys. Thanks.